y'all, I'm Laura Richardson and welcome back after a little hiatus to I'm moving to North Carolina, now what? So we have a couple of hot topics that we want to talk through, and today we're going to specifically be talking about what are you even paying for when you buy a house. So to back up for a hot minute, if you are not already following us, please go ahead, like, share, make sure that you bookmark this, because when you move to North Carolina, this is going to be important info that you need to know. If you're a first-time home buyer or a first-time in North Carolina home buyer, it's important to feel prepared, in the know, educated on the process. And one of the common questions we get is, what am I even paying for and when are these expenses due? There is a little bit of a stereotype that you have to have a massive amount of liquidated cash in order to make your first home purchase. One of the big ones that we hear is that you have to have 20% down, which is actually not true. There's a lot of different loan types out there that allow you to put a smaller down payment down, which again is liquidated money that you're getting to hold on to for other things. So let's talk through what those other things are. So before you go under contract, one of the biggest expenses that you'll have is simply time and gas money. It might take you a little while. I mean, there are certain clients that I've worked with for years now where we're still trying to flesh out exactly where they can be based on criteria and how much they're willing to spend. So it's important that you realize that you are going to spend a good chunk of time and a little bit of money trying to figure that out, or just taking your time to find the right property. Once you do go under contract, that's when we start to see a few little chunks of change come out of your pocket. You do need to be prepared to pay for your appraisal to be ordered. That's going to happen within the first few days of you being under contract. It's going to be one of those loan stipulations that you're required to do. Those appraisals can be about $400 to $500. Now, keep in mind, any of the pricing that we give is just common that we see as of today when this video is being recorded. These can always change at any time, and it's important that you talk to the vendor that's providing this to make sure it's the accurate amount that you'll see on any statement or invoice. One of the other big chunks of change that we see is a due diligence deposit. So due diligence is something that we have here in North Carolina. It's three things. It's the act of research, it's a time period, and it's a deposit. So that deposit can range dramatically. It can be as low as $1, which is not typical, or it could be as high as $100,000. It really depends on the price point of the home, where it is it in multiple offers. We've seen some ebbs and flows in this for sure based on inventory and a lot of different factors. So it's really important that you go ahead and start talking to your real estate agent and tell them, hey, based on this criteria, these locations, if it were a multiple offer situation, what's the typical? What am I going to be looking at? So keep that in mind, that that chunk of change is going to come out pretty early on, and it's going to stay in the seller's pocket until closing day, where you actually do get it back. So kind of consider it a temporary loan as long as you complete the contract. One of the other little deposits that may or may not apply to your contract is earnest money. So in our contract, we have the due diligence period and the earnest time period. The earnest time period also has a small deposit that can sit and kind of cover that window of time. But because of the COVID market, we actually saw that kind of diminish. The reasoning behind that was basically because due diligence became so powerful and so substantial that there really wasn't a need anymore to put money during earnest, because people were really not likely to walk away. Now that due diligence has kind of calmed down a little bit, we are starting to see that get tied back into contracts a little more often, especially if it's a longer contract window. A couple of the other things are your inspections. So some homes, like new construction, you might have multiple general inspections, but then there are other inspections that you won't. Like a pest inspection is not going to be common on new construction, but would be with resale. Also, if you're on septic, you're on well, if you need any specialists to come out, all of these appointments are going to require some kind of on-site visit fee, as well as the inspection costs. So you do need to be prepared to have at least $1,000 to cover that general inspection, radon, pest, etc. Another thing that you may or may not choose to do is a survey. So a survey is an outline of where the property is, where it sits in conjunction to any neighboring buildings, structures, or outlines, and it's showing a real-time version of what this property looks like. Surveys can be really important because they're going to show you things like, are there easements? Is there a fence line? Are there any encroachments? Meaning things are kind of crossing property lines, and maybe you have to deal with that or accept it. Surveys typically can be pretty substantial, especially when you start getting into large acreage. So you can always get a quote before you commit. Once you do, however, about 50% of that does have to get paid, and then the rest can be paid at closing. So keep that in mind if that's something that you choose to pursue, that is a cost that's going to come out of pocket in a big chunk before you get to the closing table. So something else to consider is if you have any future projects that you're planning, you might also get some vendors to come on site and start going ahead and giving you quotes. Those can also have some costs associated with them. They're not mandatory, but I do like to mention that. So then you get to the closing table. Closing day can be both exciting and a little overwhelming because of all the things that you have to take care of. But two of the big things that will pop up that day are your closing costs, in addition to your down payment. These are the two big chunks that you start to see on that day because you're at the end of the lending period, and your down payment is your portion that the lender is not paying for. So it's your contribution towards the home. Your closing costs are essentially all your attorney fees, loan origination stuff, your property taxes, all of those types of things that you're going to see on a settlement document. You're paying for that. So consider it about 3% of whatever the purchase price is, relatively speaking. That's again another big chunk of liquidated assets that you're going to have ready and raring to go. Before you ever go under contract, your lender can actually provide kind of a guesstimation of this. So always double check, not that you're just going to be comfortable with your monthly payments, but that you're also going to have the amount of money needed to be able to settle on closing day. Another thing that you're going to need access to on closing day are probably movers. Unless you have a good people group that's willing to do it for free, it's really important that you also have some money set aside for that, in addition to a rainy day fund. I will tell you that post-closing, Murphy's Law tends to kick in and something is going to happen. I know when I bought my own house, we literally still had the documents wet inked, deed recorded. We went to the house, so we're talking about maybe like a 5-hour time frame from when we walked through the house to when we finally got the keys. And there was a huge flood in the kitchen where a pipe had burst under the kitchen sink, and we then had to deal with it. So just be really prepared that sometimes stuff can go awry even at the last minute. So it is important that you have a rainy day fund kind of set aside for some of those bigger items. The other things that you will see post-closing start to kind of come down the pike are paying those utility bills. If you're coming from an apartment scenario, this can definitely throw you for a loop. Now you're going to have to pay for your water, your sewer, your gas, electric, internet, all those big fees that probably were wrapped into either a rental or a different type of setup. In addition to that, those mortgage payments are going to kick in. Usually you don't pay them the first month, but after that, you are going to see whatever your lender told you is that monthly amount. It's going to start rolling through and it's going to be due. So that is all of the stuff that you as an adult are going to be responsible for when you buy that house. So again, get in the know, feel prepared, ask questions, and understand that every scenario can be a little different. You can be creative in contracts and try to keep as much in your pocket as possible. That's why it always pays to work with a great real estate agent. So if you have any questions, feel free to hit us up in the comments. I'm Laura Richardson with Relevate, and we'll see you next time.